Joining us right now is United States Senator Bill Cassidy, and Senator, you all have had a time of it the last couple weeks.
Well, yes and no. I mean, obviously there's an impasse. The president wants to secure the southern border, thinks the American people will be safer, more secure if we do, and congressional Democrats do not. And so the government shut down. But on the other hand, until Democrats agree to a compromise that the president can sign, we're just kind of in limbo. So you want it to happen, but you can't kill yourself with worry when you're waiting.
What does the Senate leadership say? Now that the Republican domination of the House is over with, it comes back to a very slim majority in the Senate. And I don't know how to say this other than to come right out and say it. Is Senator McConnell going to grow a spine?
Well, McConnell really can't do anything on it. It is Pelosi who has to send us a bill because spending bills, taxing bills have to originate in the House. Mm-hmm. That's constitutional. Mm-hmm. It has to originate in the House. So it's really the negotiation between Pelosi and Schumer with Pelosi and the president. The McConnell can get Republican votes for something that the president can sign. When I say can sign, meaning that meets his criteria. Mm-hmm. But until there's some recognition on the left that we have to do a little bit more for border security, we're at an impasse.
Now, I heard, I almost called him the Senate president. I'm flashing back to Louisiana state politics. The majority leader, Senator McConnell, yesterday, his quote was something along the lines of, we're not even going to introduce a bill that can't realistically pass in this Senate. If we know the president won't sign it or we know it can't get enough votes in the Senate to pass, we're not going to even introduce it. And I couldn't have agreed with him more, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. What this House Democrats signed yesterday was political theater. It was designed to kind of make a point. First day in office, they wanted to pass something that they hoped would embarrass the president. But clearly the president is not going to sign it, so why waste your time? But the reality is we've got to come to some conclusion. The conclusion is that the president ran on securing the southern border. And it doesn't mean a concrete wall from the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico, but it does mean at some places there would be a wall. At other places there would be other forms of security. Now, let's face it, his rhetoric kind of gets people stirred up, and that's part of the issue. But on the other hand, it seems actually reasonable to me that we do that. For House Democrats, it's not reasonable. So we've got to figure out the way forward.
There's been so much rhetoric, and you say, and you're right, Senator, you say a lot of it is part of the problem. But we have had some sort of vertical barrier along that southern border for most of its length for my entire lifetime. This is not like a brand new concept going onto virgin land.
Yeah, so when I went to McAllen, Texas to look at border issues, and that's one of the checkpoints between Texas, United States, and Mexico, there is at one place where they have a concrete wall. And they said we put it there because this is where folks were sneaking across. We couldn't get them on the other side. So we put the wall there to force them to go one way or the other, and that makes it easier for Border Patrol to capture. Mm-hmm. Now, so it's a strategic use of a solid barrier. In places like San Diego, they also have a solid barrier. That is reasonable. And for folks to say there can't be any barrier any place is to basically have ignorance of what it takes to control our southern border. We just need to keep America secure. That's part of it. I hope we can come to that kind of compromise.
Well, I think most people understand that a wall won't keep all illegal immigrants out of the country because some have the wherewithal to fly into the U.S. of A. But there are those who are dirt poor, and their only way in is to cross that border.
Totally, and we have to recognize that it's not just people coming for a better life, and we're sympathetic with that, but it's also drugs that are coming across, it's human trafficking, and so there's a lot at stake here, and right now that border is a magnet for people who wish to come. Now, we can sympathize with those who wish to come. We can, I can elaborate on that, but I think we know where we are. But the fact is, any modern nation has to be able to secure its southern border, or its borders. And in our case, it's the border with Mexico. And by the way, it's not Mexicans. There's actually, kind of no net immigration from Mexico. It's folks from Central America.
Mm-hmm. A lot of Hondurans in recent months.
Yes, and so we now again, this is nothing against folks coming here because we understand that. But at the same time, a nation needs to be able to secure its border, and the president's offered several compromises on this. I'm hoping the Democrats will take up his compromise.
Well, it's an interesting thing, Senator. Right before Christmas, Karen and I were in Toronto, Canada, and one of her former colleagues lives there, and he came to visit us one evening for dinner. And he said, "What is the deal?" And I thought he was going to go off. And I said, "Don't start. You have the strictest immigration laws in the free world." And he said, "I know. And why don't you?" He said, "You're being inundated. If they can tell that in Canada, why can't we tell?"
Yeah, and by the way, the president, obviously his rhetoric can be strong, but on the other hand, in a State of the Union speech a year ago, the president said that he would be willing to offer a compromise, where the so-called DACA kids, those who were brought here when they were very young, grew up in the United States, don't know their home country, he would give them a pathway to citizenship in return for securing the southern border. That was actually further than Obama went on the issue. So despite the president's rhetoric, he's actually come very strongly out for positions that could be a face-saving middle ground between the two parties. But ultimately, he wants to secure a southern border, keep America safe and secure. And that's where the two parties are diverging.
Senator, I don't want to put words in your mouth or anybody else's, but it just seems to me that if conventional wisdom told us all that when these folks coming in from the Latin American world eventually, settled into America and got voting rights, if they were all going to register Republicans, the Democrats would want that wall built tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, and one thing to know about the census, I mean, if you want to be really kind of Machiavellian about it, the way the census tracts work is that most of the folks coming here will move to bigger cities. Once I logged on to Univision, and there was a story about a woman who came across the border, settled in Miami, and then was lost to follow-up. So, she's now here. And the way census works is you don't have to be a United States citizen. And when they apportion congressional districts, it's merely based upon the number of people living in an area, not necessarily the number of people who are citizens. In fact, nothing to do with citizenship. So the more folks who come here and move to major metropolitan areas, which almost always vote Democratic, the more it strengthens the Democratic voter base. And so you don't have to register as a Democrat to kind of benefit the Democratic Party. You just need to move to an area in which there's lots of Democrats, and that strengthens or increases the number of Democratic members of Congress. And so the way the current system works to their electoral advantage.
So, in my opinion, the census should count citizens, not residents. Citizens.
So some constitutional attorney will say that it says people, not citizens. There was a controversy because the Trump administration wanted to have a question on the census form, are you a citizen? And Democrats strongly reacted to that because they frankly don't want folks to be scared off from filling the census form by being asked if they are a citizen. So you can see this kind of playing out as how the National Democratic Party is trying to position folks coming across the border to strengthen or increase the number of Democratic congressmen.
Going back to the issue that is before all of us now, what would Senator Bill Cassidy, the odds maker, say about how long this may continue as basically a stalemate?
I'm not about to, put it this way. I'm not going to pick an over-under.
Okay. Fair enough.
I will say there are faith-saving compromises that are out there. And the president has offered more than one. Now, if the other side will become a little bit less intransigent and concede that we have to just work to keep Americans safer and secure, and in the meantime, perhaps achieve some other goals they say they want. For example, resolving this issue for the DACA kids, or maybe not $5 billion, maybe $4 billion. Then I think we can all say, both sides can save face, and we can still make Americans more secure, and we can move and we can reopen the government. But if there's total intransigence on the left, no, we're not going to accept your deal in DACA. No, we're not going to give you even any money at all, even though we know physical barriers are sometimes important, then it could be a while.
Well, and I think the shame of this, even though it's only a partial government shutdown is that there is always a human cost to this, and it's pretty much bipartisan. It's not just Democrats who work for the federal government, and it's not just Republicans either.
Well, first, it should not be seen as a Democrat or Republican issue. It should be seen as an American issue. And there are things, for example, the Coast Guard will have limited capabilities. We almost had an impact on the flood insurance program, the ability for new policies to be written. My office reviewed the law, said you're wrong, sent them a letter. They agreed with us, so now we can get that done. But it's an example of something that almost happened that fortunately did not. That would be impacting the average American. But on the other hand, the president's made a priority of making Americans safer and secure. And securing your borders is one aspect of that. And so there'll be a price to pay, but I think the president feels like that's his only leverage to get it done.
Senator, before we let you go, we've got only about a minute left here. But a lot of people back home are still concerned about where we are with the duplication of benefits problem. The people, we're still recovering from the flood 2 years ago.
Yeah, so we're able to, it's been a lot of effort, but we worked with the administration to get them to concede that that people could restore Louisiana grants even if they had taken out an SBA loan. Now, the rules have to be written for that. And at first there was some issue as to whether or not the president would sign it. We've worked through that. There have to be rules issued. And when we spoke to the folks in the federal government writing those rules, they said we have to finish up this project. We will then go to it next. They told us that the rules for the reconciliation of the duplication of benefits for those with the Small Business Administration loan would be finished, by January 31st. Now, the government shutdown may push that off into mid-February, but we have been told that's what they are working on now, and ideally sooner, but maybe just a little bit later, that will finally be resolved.
Senator Bill Cassidy, always good to talk with you, sir. Let's do it again soon.
Hey, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.